Hello, what's up everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items. I recently posted my 2020 review video and the first look at LCS for 2021. Go check that out. It's about an hour long. I think there's a decent amount of good information in there. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to quickly try to go through the different leagues and try to catch up on what has been going on with roster changes and stuff like that. So if you're new to the channel, the thing that I would warn you right now is that I don't view these things like most people do, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So I'm more focused on what I think the potential of a team is instead of like their consistency. I have different opinions on players than a lot of other people. If you're thinking to yourself, why should I trust you and not somebody else? I've been playing the game for about 10 years. Last year I made a decent chunk of money playing League of Legends DFS, and I coach the game at a high level, not a professional level, but I coach with an ex-professional for Yale University. So I do have decent game knowledge. I do have good DFS knowledge. I watch a lot of professional League of Legends. So just give me a shot, and I think the results will probably speak for themselves. So first up, we have the LCS lock-in. This is going to be a tournament that starts on the 15th. So we're 2 weeks away from this tournament. It's going to have a group stage and a knockout stage. The teams are going to be drafted into two groups, which is pretty interesting. I don't think that the LCS has done something like this for the preseason, but I think it's a smart thing to do considering there's like a void of games for a while. But I'm not going to spend too much time on the LCS because I already did that in another video. Another thing that I would say is important to realize is that I have not been following League of Legends, the professional scene, very closely for the last month or two because there hasn't been much going on. There were some random international tournaments, but I did play them on DraftKings, but I was trying to be different. I didn't make any money. I lost a little bit of money on that. Nothing life-changing, but I didn't win. I've been really focused on my career, which is in commercial real estate, but now that League of Legends is picking back up, I can easily do both of these things. It's just about managing time. So that's why I'm trying to get a couple videos pumped out right now. So yeah, the LCS lock-in. So the first part is the group stage. The top 4 teams from each group, so only one team gets knocked out on each side, it's interesting because I think it's probably smart to give a lot of these teams more time. The one issue is that the community is going to have a huge overreaction to the two teams that don't advance. So one piece of advice, if you're taking notes, I would say when we get into the first big regular season slates for DraftKings, I think that the teams that fail to qualify for the knockout stage are going to be in a good spot to play spoiler and get some upsets early on potentially. Obviously, it depends on their matchups, but that is something that I would check for because you always want to be different when you can be. I'm not telling you to play like 5% plays, but if in reality it's like 60-40 and everybody's saying it's 90-10, then you have a big percentage to take advantage of there. So there's that. So the group stage, I don't know how the schedule is going to work for the group stage. Hopefully they're like both groups playing on the same days and a bunch of just one-on-ones instead of like having teams playing multiple games on each day. Because I don't like how DraftKings creates those contests. It knocks out a lot of the variance of the results. Like I like having like 4-game slates, 5-game slates. That's how I win most of my money, if I'm being honest. I think that's one thing that I'm going to try to do better this year is limit where I'm trying to win contests by the type of slates that they actually are. Like last year, it was a lot about just shooting for the upside because 2020 was insane. It was the biggest tournaments that League of Legends ever had, and it was my chance to like make a lot of money. And I made a good chunk of money, but there was money left on the table. I'll just say that. But there's not much more to go into for this, so let's go to the LEC, and let's just get a few other things open up. So we're going to do Europe, Korea, and China. And like I said, this is a first look. I don't know what other people think about these new rosters. I will not know some of these players because they're coming up from like amateur scenes and semi-professional leagues or academy teams. So I will not know every single player. But the important thing is to kind of consider what other people are telling you about these teams. So there's a lot of overreactions out there, and generally if you just like stay even keel and realize that most teams are pretty close to each other in terms of skill, then you're going to do better in the long run, in my opinion. And based on my results, I think it's a valid way of looking at the game. Not the only way, but it's a valid way of looking at things. And everybody should have their own process, so feel free to have a different process. So let's go through all of the individual teams in the LEC. All right, so first up we have Astralis. This is a new team with some familiar faces that we've seen from some of like the amateur, some of the amateur stuff. So this used to be Origin, okay. Alfari's gone, Xerxes gone, Upset's gone. Okay, so I do know some of these names. So White Knight, he played in a couple of the EU Masters things, I believe. I've definitely seen this name before. I can't speak to how good he is as a player, so we'll move on from him. Zanzara, this is the River Shen guy. He played really well in the EU Masters, and he helped normalize Shen jungle. What I would say is this is the kind of player who's overhyped by the community in general. And he doesn't seem like the perfect kind of DraftKings player because I doubt he has the same upside that a lot of other players do. He seems more of a tank player. Last year we were in a carry meta for the junglers, and although right now it seems like assassins are pretty strong, he seems like the kind of guy who is going to thrive in like a Sejuani meta or a meta where he can play Shen in the jungle. These kind of lead to lower kill score games, so if they have it their way, they'll be a lower kill score team if we were just focusing on the jungle. That's not necessarily the case because like last year in a low kill game, you can go like 20, 30, 40 minutes and you could still end up with like 12 kills or something being the high end, not the high end, the higher kill score in a game. But that's partially because we were in a carry meta. So once we get into a tank meta, there's generally less damage on the Rift at one time. So you'll have like more 5v5s that turn into like a couple kills for each team. One team gets an objective, they have to reset and get ready for the next big objective. But Zanzara, I don't have any issues with him. So White Knight, I don't know enough about him, but I do recognize the name. Zanzara, good player, a good macro player. I think he's better for real-life League of Legends than DraftKings League of Legends. So we'll move on. Nukeduck's been around forever. If they're trying to improve their other players, actually they're an older team too. So overall, I'm probably not going to use this team that much. Nukeduck was a huge issue last year. He had a very bad season in my opinion. There were a lot of times where I had him in my rosters as a differentiator because any mid laner has the upside of like 30, 40 points in a big game, but he would consistently throw out like these 15 to 20 point DraftKings performances, even when his team is winning, like low correlation in terms of kill score in some of their wins. Just pretty annoying player to use. And I guess he's the only player left over from the previous roster, which I don't know. He's not good. He's done in my opinion. Zanzara is a quote unquote rookie, but he's been around for a long time. Apparently, same thing with White Knight. And there's nothing wrong with these players getting their first chances in the LEC at an older age. It's just when you get these like revolutionary players who come up when they're 17, 18, 19 years old, they're the ones who are shaping the metagame in terms of like, this is the best player, this is who you have to compete with for the next like 10 years or 5 to 10 years. Jeskla is another name that I definitely recognize. Who was he on? Gamepedia slow. Okay, Mouse Sports. Yeah, so he was also in NXL Movie Star Riders. Mad Lions. He was also in some of these EU Masters tournaments. Probably overrated in general then, because there's a reason he was not on one of the top teams. Probably not a difference maker. In wins, they will look good. In losses, they will look very bad. I don't have big expectations for this team based off of that. And then Promise Q is a league average support at best. Let me get water. Happy New Year's, by the way. January 1st. So, yeah, overall, not excited for this team. I'm going to avoid using this team unless, like let's say I wanted to get a different team in and this was one of the only options to stack with, then I would consider them. But this isn't a team that I'm going to focus on very much. I doubt they're going to have high DraftKings upside, and I doubt they're going to win a lot of their matches. Next up is XL. So XL is a team that last year exceeded expectations. So people are probably going to have they're probably not going to have the most reasonable outlook for this season. There were some changes made to their rosters, so let's see. Cadrill's gone. Cadrill was okay. He speaks well he speaks well. So people think he's some kind of super genius when it comes to League of Legends. That's not really the case. I just think that he's definitely good enough, and he's going to do a good job as a broadcaster. I think that's probably what he's transitioning into. He's better than a lot of the other broadcasters. He will probably be better than a lot of the other broadcasters that are out there. But he's not some kind of like next level super genius League of Legends mind. Although he might seem like that compared to the other people he shares the screen with. So Kryze had a pretty good year last year as a top laner. He has the upside of being a carry player. I think like he played but he played a decent amount of KO last year, I think. Dan, that is not who I thought it was going to be. So this is a new player. Chekolod was a very popular player from like EU Masters and stuff like that. So people are going to instantly say like, oh my god, this guy's so good. He's going to be one of the next very good mid laners in the LEC. That's probably an overstatement. All right, so this is an amateur player. Let's see. I could go to match history. Sejuani Zach Jarvan. That was in 2020 spring. So this is like something that I don't want to see from a player from last year. What is that from? 2020 spring. So he did pick up Graves eventually. Probably not someone I'm excited for the beginning of the season. They're going to have to prove it on stage. Chekolod. Patrick. Patrick's an okay player. He's not really a difference maker. He's good enough if the rest of his team are in good spots. So, like, let's say they plan on playing through top lane or mid lane, and then Patrick is just supposed to go even in lane and then show up for team fights. They could be okay. But again, they're not some kind of incredible talent. They're not an incredibly talented roster. Kryze is good, and I like that he plays carry champions as well as tank champions at a decent level. But not only carry versus tank, also like hyper carry champions, like something like Kale. So that means they're taking on additional resources and will sometimes be the focal point of their team. But it requires a strong team to play that style. For example, FPX tried to do that somewhat last year. It failed. Khan had to leave. They have Noguri, so I think they'll try to do it again. There's a reason most teams don't play like that. It's a difficult style to execute. Not that it's just a difficult style to execute. That's the best way to say it. So yeah, this is another team where I'll probably be on the opposite end. I'll be betting against XL Esports and playing against them in DraftKings consistently because the memories of last year will probably give some players unreasonable expectations for them. This league starts in 3 weeks. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm not big on them, actually. So LEC, Astralis, XL. Low kill's bad. Overhyped. I don't know if they're hyped or not, but I assume based on what I generally like assume of like the league community at large, they'll be overhyped or not overhyped. Overvalued from last year. Schalke. Okay, this is interesting. That's interesting. Okay, so now we're with Schalke. Schalke has Broken Blade. Broken Blade was from TSM. I like Broken Blade. I think he does pretty well. Abadage, a lot of people were happy with his performance last year. I think it's overstated. He was a mid laner in games where his team won and he popped off. Almost anyone at the professional level can do that. Okay, any league average player can do that, because if it's a league average player against a below average player and the one team is better than the other team, then they can have like a 10 kill performance. Obviously, you do need to have a champion pool that can take advantage of that, but even in a control mage meta, you can get these ridiculous score lines. I'm not saying that I'm not going to play him, because I will play him in spots, but not the best player in the world. Do they still have... Yeah, they still have Dylan Falco, so I like Dylan Falco. I think he does a good job. Gilius had a really good end of the season. God Gilius. People were saying a lot at the end of last year. Just another player that I don't have much hope in. I'm not going to be tricked into thinking he's some kind of amazing player. We have a ton of information about Gilius long term, and he's very similar to Dardoch in the sense that he can carry games and he can have these huge performances and he can look very impressive in some games, but he is not a consistent player. He has really good games and really bad games, so you have to kind of embrace that additional variance that he is going to have. He's the kind of guy who plays carry junglers in non-carry jungler metas, which is like the counter meta strategy, which is honestly, it's how I play the game. So I'm not knocking him for that. It's just there's additional variance, and you look very good and very bad at times. So he's probably somewhere in the middle, probably league average. This is another team where I do like Broken Blade too. That's the problem. This is a spot where people may like Schalke because of Abadage and Gilius, but in reality, they are a relatively strong team because now they have Broken Blade as well, and their bot lane can at least go even. So I think that even if I disagree with how other people view the team in terms of what their actual strengths are and what their actual weaknesses are, I think we'll end up with similar opinions on this team. So not a huge edge there for me. But I will be using them in DraftKings. This is the kind of team where you need exposure to them probably, because Broken Blade is the kind of player that can pop off. Gilius, Abadage, Neon could have some big score matches. Interesting. I didn't expect to come out like that. So probably even with perception. So that's the kind of team where maybe people are actually just right about it. For different reasons. Like their power level is about what I think it is. Okay, so Fnatic. Fnatic went from... They still have Bwipo. Bwipo is one of the best top laners in the league. They still have Selfmade. Selfmade's one of the best junglers in the league. They have Niski. Niski was extremely overrated on Cloud9, but is still at least a league average player, even in the LEC. So that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Upset. I think Upset's probably a little overrated. He is league average in a league. He's league average, really. Like I don't think he's some mechanical genius. AD carries are often just, they have a job to do. They're like quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, you get all the protection in the world. Sometimes you're going to have 300 or 400 yards and a couple touchdown passes. You're going to look amazing. And then other games you're going to go out and you're going to throw 3 picks. So that's really what he is, in my opinion. Who else? Do they have... Okay, they have Hillsong still. A good player. So they have 5 good players. They're probably one of the favorites to win. This is the kind of team where you'll also need to have a lot of exposure to them on DraftKings, because they're one of the best teams in the league, and they're going to be winning a ton of their matches. So Fnatic, still very good. And when I say very good, I mean for the LEC. I don't mean like internationally. Well, they'd have to prove that to me. Okay, here we go. Wonder. Very good top laner. One of the best top laners in the league. Jankos. Jankos didn't have a good year last year, and that's because he is not a carry player. He does have games where he carries, but he is not... That's just not who he is. He's more of like a play what the team needs you to play, do your job, let everyone else carry. That's really who he is. He'll help create advantages, but it's not on him to win the games. He has had some crazy games, like that Pantheon jungle game was insane, but that's not who he is consistently. Like, if you roster him 10 weeks in a row or 10 days in a row because you expect him to have like 10 kill performances, you're just going to be very disappointed. He's not like a peanut style player who's going to get additional resources and have really good kill scores sometimes, even in losses. Caps, probably the best player in Europe right now since Perks left. They were pretty similar. Both have huge upside. Both very good players. I like Caps. I don't have any issues with Caps. Definitely better than Niski, I'll tell you that much. Reckless went from Fnatic to G2 to replace Perks. It's really a side grade. Some people will probably say it's an upgrade because Perks had a bad year last year, but it's overstated. And then Mickey's a very good support. So G2, best team in Europe. Oh, best team in Europe. And even though it's a side grade, they may actually do better in international tournaments with Reckless than Perks, because Reckless, he has had some experience in these. Well, I mean, I guess Perks has too. Probably just a side grade then. Maybe that's just the best way to say it. Next up, Mad Lions. Okay, so we have some new players. Anybody is better than Arome, so that's an upgrade. Elyoya is replacing Shadow. I think this is a bad move. I think that Shadow had a bad tournament, a bad end of the season, and he's another player. He is a carry jungler, but last year was not the kind of carry jungle meta that suits his playstyle, really, for the most part. He's more of like a Lee Sin player. That style of jungle is what's best for him. So I think that's probably a mistake. I'm shocked that nobody picked him up. I think it's kind of ridiculous. He's definitely better than probably 50% to 3/4 of the junglers that are in the LCS and in the LEC. In terms of upside, young player will probably get another shot somewhere. Crazy to me that they would go to somebody like Elyoya over him. And this is a spot where Elyoya played in things like the EU Masters as well. In these regional leagues where the competition is lower, it's really difficult to kind of say like, this, I know that this player is going to be better than Shadow because they played well at the EU Masters. It's like that's not how it works. When the competition is more, when the other teams are more competitive, it's more difficult. Period. And Elyoya is the kind of player who was good at Graves instantly, right? So last year was probably a perfect storm for them. Yeah, they played the meta basically. So most people probably have an overinflated opinion of Elyoya. Maybe they're a diverse player and they have better and they're good at other things as well. I cannot know that as someone who only saw them at EU Masters. So the way that I look at it is people probably have probably only seen EU Masters don't realize that meta is kind of gone. A lot of those champions are still good, but the meta is not as jungle favored as it was during 2020, I think. Humanoid is a good player, not a great player, overrated in my opinion, but they have a good core on this team. That's why I think getting rid of Shadow is a mistake. Maybe they didn't like each other. That's the only way I could kind of justify the moves that they made. Karzi's good player. Kaiser's an okay player. So I think Armut was on one of the Turkish teams from Worlds, right? Like Supermassive or something. And he played really well at Worlds, actually. Yeah, Supermassive. So he played really well at Worlds, which helped him get a contract in the LEC. More money. Good for you. Definitely better than Arome. Arome's bad player, in my opinion. I know it's kind of mean, but it's just the truth. And it's bad relative to other professional players. Obviously, they're good at League of Legends, but that's not enough. You need to be one of the best players in Europe to compete at this level, and I just don't think that's him. So let's do that. G2 Mad Lions. Shadow gone. Good young core still, but Yuya probably. So the one thing I'm trying to think of is like in Mad Lions' first matches this year, people are probably going to say like, "Oh, Mad Lions trying to rebound after a horrible performance at Worlds. Now they have Armut. Now they have Elyoya. Oh, nobody's going to stop them this year." But right now they're probably the third best team, assuming that none of these other teams are better than them as well. So that's that. Okay, now we have a team with a bunch of substitutes. What's the name of this song? Agracevo. That's a Tenacious D reference. If you don't get Tenacious D, you don't get me. So I don't know anything about them. Hyrit, don't know anything about them. Razork, he is another player who is probably just league average. Looked bad last year, but not as bad as they looked last year. Kabe is a pretty good player. The TSM thing is going to make people have a lower opinion of Kabe, but still a good player overall. Denik had a bad year last year, I think. Vander had a good year last year, but Vander is not... Vander is a good glue guy on a good team, but he is not a transformative player, in my opinion. So I don't have a high opinion of this roster. I don't know anything about their top lane. Viteo... Okay, so Viteo, they played well in EU Masters as well, I think. That's interesting. We'll see how they perform. But a lot of their ability... Actually, Viteo played really well, right? I think their... LDLC was good. LDLC was the team with Yellow Star. They play decent amount of control mages. They play Akali when Akali was good. Lucian. Basically, their season will come down to how good Viteo really is. How good is Viteo? Can Razork rebound? Can Razork / Kabe / Vander rebound? I think that's actually... This is the kind of team that Vander would be good on. If Viteo plays really well, if Razork plays really well, then Vander's going to help them with the macro game, with shot calling, and being able to put them in spots in like games where it's 50-50 to actually come out on top, because that's really what the best supports do. But top lane, I have no idea. I have no clue. So we'll just move on. Rogue. Otto Omni still playing. Is he? Otto Omni. Yeah, it looks like he's still playing. So I like Otto Omni. Finn, very overrated player. So this is probably a side grade. Inspired had a good year last year. Larson had a good year last year. Hansama had a good year. I love Hansama. I think very good player. Willing to take the risks that a good player needs to take. Trimby, no, they're another player that I think played in EU Masters. I have no idea about this player at all. Are they going to be much better with Trimby than Vander? I don't know. Basically, their jungle, mid, and AD carry are still very good. Otto Omni is probably coming to this team as a win now kind of situation. Like, they want to play really well right now, win right now. I think it's possible. I think that it's unlikely that they are able to beat G2 or Fnatic in a best of 3, but they're going to be competing with Mad Lions for that 3 spot. And Misfits. I mean, Mad Lions, Misfits, and Rogue are all probably right around the same level. Is Trimby better than Vander? Is Otto Omni just as good as Finn? Because that's how other people are going to look at it. I think Otto Omni is better than Finn for right now. So that's interesting. I'll do a actually let's do that now. Tier maker. How many teams changed? Just Astralis? Let's see. My account. Alright. So we'll have that ready for later. Rogue. We just did Rogue. SK Gaming. SK Gaming is the kind of team I just don't like. So let's see. Oh, maybe I like them now. That's funny. So let's see. Last year, Trick was always interesting. Probably past his prime. Wait, what? Huh? What? Crown Shot is on the Academy team? What? What? That's weird. Huh. So let's see. Gen X was okay last year. Had some really good Volibear games, I think. Tinks was a lot of fun to watch during EU Masters. Tinks is the kind of player I hope is able to capitalize on this transition into the LEC. Has high upside in my opinion. Blue, no idea who this guy is. Jezu, no idea. Treats was from TSM. They played okay. Berto is also from like the EU Masters and stuff. Treats is not a transformative player. Again, just like a league average at best. Same with Berto. Jezu, I have no idea. Blue, no idea. Tinks, I hope is a good player. I liked Tinks a lot from EU Masters, but maybe I'm overrating them. And then Gen X. So they're definitely a tier below the other mid-range team, so probably bottom tier team. Bottom tier question mark? Their best case scenario is mid tier, I think. I'd be absolutely shocked if they made top 4. But if they do, it's going to be due to players like Tinks. Okay, next up, Shigenda. Team Vitality. So Shigenda is another player from Ago Rogue, I think. Yep. Ago Rogue. Played really well in EU Masters. It's funny because like EU Masters, I think that LEC was in a spot where it's probably correct for them to take a chance on a lot of these types of players coming out of regions. Coming out of like these regional leagues and EU Masters. Like at some point you need to get new players in to your league to kind of like revamp everything. It's sort of like a blood transfusion. When people say like new blood, like that's kind of what they're going for. So Shigenda is a pretty good player. there were a decent number of games, I think, where Jagenda carried their team. Skeens is okay. Skeens really wasn't much of a difference maker last year for the most part. Militza had a very good year last year. Comp and Labrov were a solid bot lane duo. Interesting. They're an interesting team, but again, there's no reason to think that they're going to take some kind of like insane step forward and like be able to beat the upper tier teams. So I think overall is a solid roster. And if you remember from last year, I mean, the LEC was like hyper competitive. So hopefully we get something like that again. Let's see. So Astralis was Origin. So I'm just putting Origin in the thing, so I'm not going to upload the new picture right now. Excel, let's see. G2 is definitely the best. Fnatic is up there. Mad Lions and Misfits. Mad Lions, Misfits, and Rogue are probably all right there. Schalke is the kind of team that everyone wants to be better than they are, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. SK Gaming, bottom tier, question mark. That was the Tinks team. Vitality's up there already. XL could be in this. So right now, I think this is how I would do it. So right now, if I had to guess roughly how this season's going to shake out, I would say G2 is going to come in first place. Fnatic will be the well, not really a dark horse, but they're the ones that have the best chance of beating G2, but I still think G2 wins because G2's roster is very good. Mad Lions, probably not as good as last year because of the like Shadow and Elyoya situation. I could be wrong about that. Maybe Elyoya is better than I think. But Misfits, Rogue, and Mad Lions are all about the same power level in my opinion. Schalke, Team Vitality, and XL are about the same power level. And then SK and Origin are the two teams I expect to miss the playoffs before the season starts. And obviously it's preseason. This is more important for like your perception of matches going into DraftKings week 1, as opposed to like trying to get this perfect before the end of the season. It's just about like how am I going to use what I think will happen in the future to make decisions now, because we need to eventually get to that point, and this obviously changes throughout the year. So that's it for the LEC. I'll probably stop this video here and then make another one for LCK and the LPL. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.